Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna been asked a question on pride, different levels of pride on this for spiritual aspirants. Also been asked the question on honesty and the unconscious, spoke on that. And also, yes, the unconscious and dishonesty and honesty and pride and pride and humility, which go hand in hand, and the different levels of that. Okay, I think that's a wonderful question actually, and it's could probably talk on that for several hours. But I think David Hawkins, who was he's my spiritual teacher, is dead now. But yeah, he's just to give you the pedigree of David Hawkins. He's got lots of books and material for people who are interested. But his sponsor was Bill Wilson in the 12 Steps when he first started his spiritual journey. He became a Course in Miracles teacher later on. His book was endorsed by, if you can believe it, Mother Teresa. He was a kind of a mentor for Mother Teresa. So, you know, Bill Wilson, who also had a very good relationship with Mother Teresa, and yeah, he was definitely an enlightened teacher. I strongly recommend his works, which are his books and his website. Anyway, so there are levels of consciousness. There are, and he goes through them in great depth in his works, the levels of fear, pride. He also goes in depth into addiction to get to integrity, the first level of honesty and courage, especially if you're an addict joining a 12-step group and are willing to come out of denial that you've got a problem. And work through to the upper levels, transcending the ego, which is transcending thinking, then getting to love, unconditional love, and enlightenment, the fields of silent awareness and presence. So he goes through the whole thing and the whole journey of how to dismantle and the different areas. So this is a great question. I think they're actually quite intertwined. The unconscious, pride, humility, and honesty and dishonesty, they're actually all related. So I'm just going to waffle on this because it's a great thing. So through muscle testing research, which is kinesiology, I'll go through that on another day. But there is a very significant level called integrity. Everyone who's below that is actually in so much significant, if you like, denial, dishonesty, has so many negative belief systems within them, and are just used to lying to themselves non-stop, that they are actually what's called, termed through his work, below integrity. Means that they're fundamentally dishonest, and usually they're energy drawers, and their position is they're predatory. So they're always like, how can I take money from this one, steal food from that person? How can I manipulate this woman to get sex? So that's their wiring. They're actually below integrity. So they tend to have I mean, if you're interested in the big book, I mean, it says it's spiritual malady. The spiritual malady is you're below integrity. You haven't got a spiritual connection, and therefore you have what I call, in simple terms, the God-shaped hole, and you try and fill it up with food, sex, pride, and all the other things from the world. You're looking for something external in the world to fill the emptiness inside, except a relationship and a spiritual connection to God. So that would be extreme. So anyone who's below, especially in active addiction and no spiritual connection, that would be extreme self-centeredness, selfishness. They're being run. I won't go into too much detail by the negative attractor fields. These are the negative. Carl Jung kind of talked about it with the collective unconscious, but you're like tuning into radio stations of energy fields. So when you're in addiction, pride, fear, you're being run by you're actually picking up negative thoughts from collective energy fields like a radio station, and you're actually being run by these fields. So actually, it's a place of no spiritual connection. And so there's extreme dishonesty. The significance of humility and lack of humility, well, of course, it's the idea that my ego is the center of the universe, is the core of the ego. So forget divinity, forget there's some higher consciousness. There is a God of an absolute. My ego is the arbiter of reality, the absolutely most important thing on the whole planet is my ego and my thinking. So with that kind of thing, the spiritual connection is 100% lost. So I'd say, and you're run by your unconscious, which has got a huge amount of negative programming, and you're not aware you're being run by your unconscious, and you're tuning into these negative energy fields. In a way, simplistically, what Carl Jung took, the collective unconscious is running you at those negative levels, fear, pride, or addiction. So you're picking up thoughts from the atmosphere, if you like. And so all addicts tend to think alike. All people who are into, various addictions, and actually thinking the same thoughts, they're picking up from the same radio station, the collective. So you're being run by your own unconscious. You're not spiritually connected, so you're unconscious. You're unconscious of your spiritual connection, which is truth. There's an absolute truth of love and honesty and integrity. And when you're 100% being run by these negative programs unconsciously and from the collective radio stations, I would say if it's extreme, if you're like a serial killer or something, then you're probably right down at the bottom, or a gangster or something. I hope there's no gangsters in the room today. Anyway, I'm sure you're overcoming that. And then the ego is very inflated. There's no conscience. There's no connection to the spiritual essence, and everything goes for your own narcissistic ends. So that's no humility. That's being run by your unconscious programs would be many, and they'd be extremely dishonest, and they'd be running you automatically like a robot, and you'd be collected to the negative attractive fields, or as Carl Jung would say, the various negative levels of the unconscious, collective unconscious. So it's a very, very bad thing. So pride, massive. I mean, psychology, they call them what is it? The people who have the God complex, ego. Anyway, they have like I'm God and I'm going to run the world and control everything. Yeah, so no humility, full of pride, and totally dishonest because they're not being spiritually true to their essence. They're actually, yeah, if the essence is love and truth and integrity, then they're the opposite of that. So they're the absence of love and integrity and truth and allegiance to a higher source, to God. Their allegiance to themselves, to their thinking, and to their selfish interests are running them. So that's the most extreme end, and there are levels of it. So as you start to, the most important thing is if you try and get honest, then you probably, if you're down at that level, probably wanting to join a 12-step group is what I'd recommend just to get to integrity. Then you can join more advanced groups like the Course in Miracles or enlightenment groups later on. But you need to do an inventory. You need to do it with somebody else and a mentor or a priest or something, and take spiritual instruction to come out of the unconscious and the huge dishonesty, because you won't be able to do it yourself. So I think that's it. So yes, I mean, I could go into detail on dishonesty. I mean, like the dishonesty is compounded by rationalizations. When I was a food addict, so I could easily rationalize taking food out of the fridge when my parents were asleep upstairs and pretending I didn't do it. It was kind of obvious I did it, but so I was able to rationalize. And if anyone asked me while I was in addiction, are you selfish? Are you dishonest? Of course, I'd say, no, I'm a lovely person. I'd just blame everybody. I'm a victim of my parents. I'm a victim of this. I blame everyone else in the world for my problems. And I'm resentful of everything. And I'm just a poor, innocent victim who's totally honest all the time. Totally the most deluded belief systems were running me. And you know, if you told me that, you might believe me because I probably sound like I believed the bullshit I was saying. Probably did believe my bullshit because I was being run by all that unconscious programs. So as you go up the levels, which Hawkins describes, um, each level has a different level of honesty and integrity. So as you go, as I mean, for example, if you're stuck a lot, like a lot of the Western world is stuck in their heads. So it's humility to understand that your own thinking is not the source, the absolute source. There's a source of wisdom, which is not your head trying to rationalize things. Your ego is not. So that's a humility that comes at the level of overcoming the thinking as the source of wisdom, that there isn't a higher source of wisdom that is not just your head trying to think things through as if you're God. So there's pride, humility. So at that level, you know, there's different levels of pride, humility, and coming out of denial to overcome the head as as your God, really. You worship your own thinking as God rather than trying to get a connection to something higher than that. So at the level of love, usually you're starting at the level of when you start to do like prayers and forgiveness and try and be patient and forgive everybody. You're going from the level of conditional love, like I only love my parents, but I don't like corrupt politicians. Well, that's judgmentalism and unforgiveness. So to get to unconditional love, there's a lot of work to clear up the denial that I'm still favoring and judging others and I haven't got to the stage of unconditional love. So there's levels of denial and lack of humility. Like I'm capable of judging a person because I'm God and my parents are good and that politician over there is evil and bad and should be executed. So all of that stuff means I'm still in denial. I still believe that I am the judge in the universe and that I understand things. So there's levels of pride coming out of denial, uh, coming into unconscious belief systems that are operating and releasing those, and having humility to a higher source, to God. So to get to unconditional love, and then to go to enlightenment, again, you're coming out of certain levels of denial. There's still some sense of a me, an independent me in separation to others. So then I have to do the advanced work that Hawkins talks about dissolving the ego to get those um, to get to those places of infinite presence where I'm being run by, as St. Francis says, I'm an instrument for God. To get my ego's died now. It's in dying one is born to eternal life. So the infinite source one is always connected to, and that runs you. Your ego's gone. So you now are literally an instrument for God, and that's the levels of enlightenment, which are the hardest. So coming out of the denial of wanting to be still something connected to the body and some independent entity in separation to God and the universe needs to be dissolved. So there's levels of humility coming out of the belief systems at that level to get to the fields of enlightenment. So they're all correlated, pride, humility, and denial and unconscious belief systems, because of course, you can't come out of an unconscious belief system until you become conscious. So as you start committing to a higher path, a higher spiritual truth, a higher program, and that which is unconscious will eventually come up. It's forced to come up in the light of a higher truth. And I think Hawkins' work tells us, the difference between the 12 steps, the Course in Miracles, and the teachings of enlightenment. So you can see the various levels of illumination and truth. Okay, so thank you for that question. We shall stop the recording now. Press stop.